But firstly, I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners of this country, the Gadigal people. I've lived in Perth most of my life. I live on the Noongar Nation over there, which is an important part of the country too, for many reasons. It's part of the largest native title claim or determination in Australia's history, I so believe. But it does cover the city of Perth, which brings many interests and challenges. So I'm the state manager of Community Housing Limited. We're as Simon pointed out, we're a large not-for-profit community housing provider, and we operate in the 6 states. Just up or down, across with that one. Beautiful. So we're a not-for-profit. We were established nearly 25 years ago. We're in all states. We manage around 7,000 homes. We don't just do Aboriginal housing. We do long-term, social and affordable. We do a number of different programs, such as disability and key worker in places like the Pilbara, where they need to encourage people to go and work. People like hairdressers, plumbers, not just miners, but people to keep communities going. But in the state, around half of the houses we manage are specifically for Aboriginal people. In 26 towns, there's only 3 or 4 towns there. The most are remote Aboriginal communities. Our mission is really about working with community. Our vision is to end world housing poverty, and as I say, we are a not-for-profit. We're also a not-for-loss, but we're in pretty far-flung locations, not only in Western Australia, but places like Timor. I believe the managing director is setting up in Rwanda at the moment, so that's got to be a bit of a challenge, I would presume. Places like Chile as well. So we have a fair bit of scope, but it's always about working with community to help communities reach their own ends and work to their own aspirations. That's the cornerstone of community development. Not rocking up with your own idea, but working with the ideas that come out of the local people. And things like creating employment and training opportunities are paramount there. I talked about this yesterday a little bit, playing to your strengths. Shane Hamilton mentioned it this morning, but looking at your assets, not your deficits, and changing that mindset. It's really an important part of what we do. I also put up this slide yesterday. This is one of our more remote communities, Kalumbaroo. And I think it's important for me to sort of state from the outset, because I know there was a bit of a perception yesterday, what's a large, Gadiya, we would say, white-based organisation doing in somewhere like Kalumbaroo. From my perspective, and I was working in the government at the time, CHL rocked up and said, we can do this. There was no other provider around in the East Kimberley, so it's not as if we turned up and took over. We literally had the opportunity to manage these communities and saw it as very much as a privilege to be able to under contract, I should add, work with communities like Kalumbaroo. It's a very challenging environment. Kununurra is 3.5 hours on a plane from Perth, and then you've got to get on a little flying tin can and travel for an hour, often in the wet season, going up and down like a yo-yo to this community, which is by WA standards quite large, but it's about 80 or so properties. To manage that, an Aboriginal man from a Yamatji man from Western Australia, he works up there week about, so every second week he's living in that community. He's very well known to the local people, and then every second week he comes back to Kununurra and does a lot of the admin and whatever work from Kununurra. So yeah, it's a challenging environment. There's wet season. There's often different family groups. WA has a history, and I'm assuming New South Wales isn't that different around mission stations and the like. Kalumbaroo is a classic. You've still got the mission here on the higher, best bit of land in town, and the community sit on the lower lying area, which in the wet can be surrounded by water, and they get quite waterlocked, as it were. So that's our story in WA. We're a community housing provider managing housing across a range of different needs and interests. I mean, a particular interest of mine at the moment is housing for veterans, because they seem to be forgotten about when they return from conflict zones, and there's a lot of PTSD in places like Perth. So we're looking at providing a specific sort of housing product for veterans. But there was clearly a need back 5 or 6 years ago when CHL, and I should add the person who came up with this idea was the current head of the AHO in New South Wales. But when Shane came to the Housing Authority and said, we can do this, we just thought fantastic. Not so much because you're a growth provider, etc., but because you've got a can-do attitude and you're about community. And importantly, you know, it's wherever we can, and we work with what's called the Aboriginal Workforce Development Centre in Perth, get Aboriginal people on the ground working with those communities. I mentioned yesterday we're moving as part of the group of companies to form a subsidiary company, if you like, called Aboriginal Community Housing Limited, and that's something that we've started this year, and we're just working through the basics of that at the minute, around the governance, the board, the constitution, etc. But it will be an Aboriginal managed entity. It'll have its own board. It'll be Aboriginal majority board. There'll be an Aboriginal chair. And for anything we do in this space, including we manage transitional housing in places like Kununurra and Broome as well, it'll come under that entity. I'm rapidly going through my allotted 10 minutes. We do have an internal maintenance service in Kununurra, which once again we're looking at employing Aboriginal people. We've got the Apprentice of the Year up there currently working with us, doing a fantastic job. We are very much focused on strengthening communities through that. I mean, one of the reasons is, I suppose it makes sense around value for money, but you know, having that maintenance service on the ground is a really important aspect of community building. People can see that these people are working not only on the houses but on community projects, things like building sheds and community gardens. We believe it's very important to have that presence on the ground. Collaborating with the likes of Job Pathways, Work for the Dole, getting that sort of throughput, if you like, to use a really shocking economic word, but I blame Simon. No, but getting those people who want to have a job and want to go into training through our maintenance shed. We talked a bit about yesterday. I won't belabor the point, but information and communication is critical, and that's something I guess that we pride ourselves on, because we will manage the property as best as we can. In some communities under what's called housing management agreements, where the Residential Tenancies Act applies. Now, the point about CHL is we're into property and tenancy management. All the other important stuff around managing a property and for example, providing support or financial counselling or wellbeing counselling or whatever it may be, supporting that community, that's not our bag. We do property and tenancy management, and we believe, or we hope we do it well, and we hope we do it in partnership. You know, that's really our reason for being. So clear communication. The tenant understands what their rights and obligations are as a tenant. They've got rights. If the thing's not fixed, you know, if it's an urgent repair and it's not fixed in that allotted period, 24, 48 hours, whatever it is, then they can take us to the magistrate. And we tell them that, and that's, you know, it's important. They've got rights, but they've also got obligations, as do we. Providing clear procedures for reporting repairs, clear information regarding priority works, and also evaluating how we're going. Talked a bit yesterday about customer care. Things like having a local administration presence where, I mean, we do have a national call centre, which is based in Box Hill in Melbourne, and we have a presence in Perth as well. But if you've got an admin person on the ground, I talked a lot yesterday about really, in my view, supporting a decentralised maintenance model. If you've got somebody on the ground that understands things like law business, funerals, who's home, who's not home, the kids have all got, you know, the family's gone away for school holidays, whatever it is, it's much easier to set up that maintenance and that relationship with the tenants. Because oftentimes you will rock up, you drive 4 hours somewhere to a community and you rock up and the tenant isn't home. So the more local knowledge you have, the better. Things like having a code of conduct for contractors is really important. The reason I don't like the head maintenance approach, the way it's been promoted or rolled out in Western Australia, is because people were left hanging high and dry when they had. I talked yesterday about a woman in Columba who actually passed away waiting for a hot water system to turn up. And we don't manage maintenance under that contract. It goes to a head maintenance contractor. Now, that's just appalling. We had a bloke near Kalgoorlie living in a live house. He was an old guy and he had a young boy, and they were living in a house that was, when you touched a metal surface, you got a jolt. The contractor eventually turned up and turned off the power. Job done. So I can't sort of stress the point enough. Having that close relationship between tenancy and maintenance, in my view, is paramount. 60-40 rule is the rule we generally apply around planned versus responsive maintenance, just as a broad rule of thumb. And I know Simon has a different, or AHO have a bit of a different view, but
we're about 2/3, 1/3. So
yeah, okay, and that sort of focus on vacants as part of that. It's important to complete the job right first time, obviously. Don't keep turning up and charging variable travel costs, which is a problem over in WA. Building a sustainable business is something that we're increasingly seeing as important, so don't just necessarily focus on fixing the houses, but see what you can do. There was a talk yesterday about maybe fixing the public houses, the non-Aboriginal houses, or doing some work at the school or the shire or whatever it may be. So not getting too typecast in your role. It's just a way to support the sustainability going forward. And things like thinking about regular maintenance requirements. This point here near the bottom, because we do a lot of things like prim safe screens, which cost a fair bit. Ultimately, we'd like to manufacture those things on site and save a lot of money. We've also got this. I didn't talk about this yesterday, but we've got this idea in development now around. For tenancy-related damage or debt, having a sea container, somewhere like Columba, which has some of those basic fixtures and fittings in there, like doors and door handles, that often get broken. So where we can, this is only an idea, but just lessening the cost, lessening the debt that the tenant will accrue if that door handle or door is broken, being able to fix it much more easily. And I talked yesterday, and I've talked about it now, about why I support a decentralised approach, less wait times, better local knowledge, less costs, less bureaucracy, etc. But I think it is horses for courses. There was a presentation yesterday on the panel from Bridge Housing, from Rebecca, and for them, with 2,000 properties, the head maintenance approach works really well. The trouble in Western Australia was you had a system of managing 40,000 social housing properties, or public housing properties, which was just plonked onto a remote community. And, blind Freddie, myself included, thought that's not a really bad idea. But, and it's come to pass. And I'm glad there's no government West Australian officials in the room, because I'd be very unpopular at the moment. That's me. Thanks for your time. I hope I've managed to explain a little bit better than yesterday Community Housing Limited's role in this space. As I pointed out, we feel very privileged to be there. We are rebranding as an Aboriginal organisation because that gives us legitimacy. I mean, if we keep rocking up to places like Columbaroo and we don't have that local flavour and identity, and we're not Aboriginal managed, we are at a disadvantage. So we're only in Western Australia at the moment doing that work. I mean, potentially we could look further afield, but it's very early days. Unfortunately, after this session, I've got to get back to Perth in a hurry. But so if I don't stick around, it's only because I'm rushing out. But I see there's a session coming up on partnerships, which is something I did mention yesterday when asked a question. But look, I'm not here to try and sell ice to Eskimos or anything. If people are interested in partnerships, then CHL is interested in talking to you. But we're certainly not about takeovers, or it's not even on our radar. If people can see that there's benefit in working with a large provider, we'd very much be interested in talking. But it's very much on your terms. Thank you.